Are you an aspiring creative in entertainment, business, fashion, design, or the arts? Do you want to elevate your creative passion project to the next level? Then this show is for you. Whether you want a career in television, film, radio, literature, music, or beyond, Creative Breakthrough will show you how to take your dreams and turn them into reality. This show will not only leave you feeling motivated and inspired, but also provide you real-life tools to pursue the creative journey you have always wanted. I'm your host, creative coach, and chicken wing lover, Shireen Kassab, aka the Funny Brown Girl. Yes, I have an unhealthy obsession with chicken wings. Now, get ready to flex your creative muscle. How many of you know someone who has rung the bell at the New York Stock Exchange? This week, our guest, Abi Varghese, recently had the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do so for the launch of his new comedy sitcom, Metro Park. Abi is a New York-based writer and director best known for his Netflix series, Brown Nation. His other notable work includes Akara Kajjakal, an Indian TV sitcom that went for 5 seasons. Abi's feature film includes Monsoon Mangoes. He's currently working on a feature film in Hindi as well as a couple of new TV series. In this episode, we talk about balancing a full-time career with a passion project, making the move to full-time creative entrepreneur, and taking your script from creation to production. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Welcome to the guest chair, Abi.
Thank you so much, Shireen.
No, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me on as a guest.
Yes. So one question I really like to start with when I talk to creatives is, how did your creative journey start?
Well, my creative journey started maybe like about 10 years ago. I knew that I always wanted to get into films and writing films and directing films. But I played the safe game of getting a corporate job, getting my MBA. But my passion was always in films. So what I did was that, during the weekends, we would film a TV show, like a YouTube series, in a regional language, my language called Malayalam, and we would just air it on YouTube pretty much every week, and it became a big success back in 2010 and 2011, and that kind of made me realize that I could probably do this full time. And everything kind of started off from there. Just kind of getting a feedback from the audience saying that, the things that you're making are relevant. So it all started that way. And then I slowly drifted away from my 9-to-5 job and really got into full-time filmmaking.
That's awesome. That's such a cool story. So do you ever look back and think you should have just gone straight into film versus going to school and pursuing your MBA?
Yeah, it's actually like, I always think about that, and I think it's a little mixed for me. I feel like that now that I look back, when I was there, I always I felt like, man, I should have just gone into films full time. But now looking back, I think a lot of the film business need the business degree. And I'm kind of glad that I got my MBA because right now, when you're pitching out TV series and film, there's a lot of numbers involved. There's a lot of business terminology, and there's a lot of networking involved that business school has really taught me. So I think no matter what I know that you try to be creative and you want to be 100% creative. But I think in order to make it in this business, I think you definitely need to know the business side of things as well. I think it goes really well together.
So then you also went to school for screenwriting. Did you do that immediately when you decided to leave your job, or did you wait a few years?
I actually did that in between. So I went back to NYU for screenwriting, and I've just taken classes to develop a feature film that I had in mind. So I did that, after work, night times.
Oh, okay. So you did that part-time at night?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Do you find that professional schooling is needed? Like, did you find it useful to go back to school for that?
No, I don't think it's really needed. I think it's just a matter of the people that I found at the film school. They became like really my good buddies and people that I associated with in later early projects. So I don't know if film school is necessarily the answer, but I think it's like collaborating with people that are like-minded and finding that unique, talented people that could share that vision with you.
Right. That is true. Finding those people. So I'm assuming you were working in New York City, right, at Unilever?
Yeah, I was.
So you were at this desk job from 9 to 5. How did you kind of balance this creative side and your desk job?
So I think it's always it's a balance. Like you do the 9 to 5, but then you come home. After after 9 o'clock, you start writing again. So I kind of forced myself to write about like 2 or 3 pages a day, which is pretty decent, One thing I realized is that even after work, even after I quit my job at Unilever, I started to like write full time, but still the output was pretty much the same, which was about like 3 or 4 pages a day. And I think sometimes like you try to stretch it out a lot more and it doesn't really work. There's a breaking point, I feel like, for writers, at least for me, there is, after like 3 or 4 pages, it's just kind of like, I don't know, like nothing comes out right.
Yeah, that's true. Like you just feel like you've hit a wall.
Yeah.
So did people at work know what you were doing?
Yeah, they did. They've seen my YouTube videos and things like that. So, there was a lot of support. And that's one thing I really liked about it. I think, when I decided to quit my job, you speak to people come start talking to you about their own passions and how they want to kind of leave corporate and do something that they're really passionate about. So like it was great hearing these stories from people that I never thought had like a life outside of work. So that was like very nice.
That is awesome. So when you left, like the day you left, like how did you decide that this is it? Like I mean, I'm sure a lot of thought went behind it, picking that day.
Yeah, it did actually. I don't know. It was haunting me for about a couple of years. And then I told my wife that I just have to like pick a date. And it was like March 15th or something like that. And I just picked a date, and did it and kind of like worked backwards, so I had like 3 months to tell my boss, that I'm, thinking about quitting. And then I just gave like a 2 week notice, and said that, I'm pretty much out. and, and then, during that time, I had like 2 or 3 shows to pitch out. One was Brown Nation. It was like a pitch. We had the pitch document. We had we had the script ready, the pilot ready, everything ready. And so I decided to kind of quit and like take it full time.
That's awesome. So you had told your manager or your boss ahead of time that you were going to quit, and that didn't cause any friction?
It didn't. It didn't because they always knew that I was kind of passionate about films. So I was kind of open about it. I was pretty open about it.
Okay, so I want to get to this pitching stuff, but a couple more questions before we move on. So you leave your job. Can I ask you how old you were when you left your job?
Yeah, I was 28. Yeah.
And what was your parents' reaction?
It was my mom, dad were like pretty worried about me. So
just so our listeners know, you're South Asian, right? So
yes.
You have the South Asian, that culture of like you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer and be successful in a traditional job, right?
Yeah. And they were kind of like happy with my job, and I was traveling, I was making decent money, and like it was pretty safe. And then, so they were kind of pretty like afraid of like what I'm going to be, but they always knew that, I had a thing for films. And even when I was like 14, I made short films and all these things. So they always knew that I was going to do it one day, but they just didn't realize it was going to happen.
So did they give you a big lecture?
They did. No, they were just being like, just being cautious about it. So it wasn't as much of a big lecture as it was like, just, make sure that you want to do it, and kind of figuring out like that you're not going to be getting paid, that safety cushion is gone. So
Yeah. So what were your thoughts about that? Like, what were you going to do for an income? I know you were going to pitch these things, but while those pitches were happening, what was the income looking like?
so that was very hard because in a corporate environment you get like weekly or bi-weekly, right? Like or
Mhm.
like sorry, bi-monthly pay, which is pretty safe, and the fact that like even if like and this is the thing, like even if you did hard work or even if you like did mediocre work, you still got paid. so so but outside of the corporate environment, it doesn't work that way.
I love that. I'm
So
going to put that on my desk. Even if I do mediocre work, you got to pay me.
yeah, and then and who's gonna know, right? So
Exactly.
so, but just coming outside of that, you realize that you really have to work for money, and the fact that if you don't do any good work, right, especially in this creative field, that you won't be taken, that no one's going to take your material, and the fact that no one's even going to consider you, and even if you do have like good amount of work that you have, it's just going to require a lot of time for something to get made, and that's the first thing that I really got, I really learned once I quit my job.
So how are you supporting yourself?
So it's pretty much right now. It's pretty much jobs after jobs. So with the success of Brown Nation, I've had like two other film offers, and we just recently did another TV series. So
Oh, congrats.
yeah, recently it's been like good, but it's just the first year after I quit. It was pretty tough.
Yeah. So, I mean, so yeah, in that first year, how were you supporting yourself? Just savings?
Yeah, it was just savings. Yeah, it was pretty much like I just saved up, knowing that this day was going to come.
So would you
Uh,
do anything differently? Like planning ahead or anything?
no, I think I was pretty planned pretty well. Like I had like multiple projects going, but the fact is that it was we pitched it out. So for Brown Nation, we pitched out the TV series to multiple networks, right? And the issues that we were having is that a lot of people thought that it was kind of like stuck in the middle, like where it wasn't very Indian and it wasn't very American. So it
Right.
was like somewhere in between. So what I decided was I took my own money, me and like two of my friends, two of the other writers, we put up our own money and created a pilot. We shot a pilot and showed it to investors. Then we got the actual funding to make the first season of Brown Nation. So even before it was like greenlit by like uh, I would say like by distribution companies, we actually made that entire thing independently.
I love that. I love how you just went. Like, did someone tell you that it would help if you made a pilot, if you filmed it, if you shot it?
Yeah, because everywhere we go, I'm meeting people, and they would all say that there's hundreds of like scripts that come in every week, and how do you kind of stand out, right? So we wanted to kind of stand out, and kind of put our own money towards our work. Right? So that kind of like shows a little bit of initiative from our side, and the fact that we're kind of like able to risk our own money, and because we really believe in our project.
Right. So let's walk through the pitch process for people who are interested in getting into writing. So you wrote your script. When you wrote your script, like, were you writing this at NYU still, or did you do this on your own time?
So at NYU, we were writing a feature film.
Okay.
So right after that, knowing that the feature film wasn't taking a long time to get financed, we started doing something smaller budget, um, which was Brown Nation, which was
Foundation.
about, yeah. And me and my friend who wrote the feature with me, we came together and we were like, let's just do something really fast, that we don't need to spend a lot of money on, and see if it works. So it was a sitcom, and I was always been like fascinated by sitcoms, because I don't know, for me it's like it's they seem to be a little bit easier to write, and I like the format, about 22 minutes, and I like the fact of like building a character and just changing around the situations. I always liked that, so it kind of felt natural to me. So that's why we kind of created Brown Nation, because it was a space that no one was playing in at that time, and we figured, why don't we just shoot the pilot and see where it takes us? So the pilot got pretty good traction from investors, and they were able to like fund the first 10 episodes.
So taking a step back, so you write a script. When you write a script, then do you have to like get it edited? Do you submit? Like I know there's all these websites online where you pay them and they'll read your scripts for you. Did you do any of that stuff?
No, we didn't do any of that. It was pretty much like three of us. So we would come together. We would sit down and write an episode, like just an outline of an episode. What happens, like an A story, a B story, and a C story. But it would be Matt, me, and George. We would write this together, but one of us would do the first episode, like the first draft, pass it on to the second person, and the third person would have like the final say.
Okay, awesome. So, that's a good process. And so you write this script, and then what do you do? Do you have to find an agent?
No, being that it was like independent, we didn't have to find the agent first. We just had to convince the actors. And once we got the actors on board, we had Raj Verma and Shana Strajriwala and Omi Vaidya. We had a couple of players that were kind of known in the Indian film industry. So once we got them involved, we were able to go back to the investors and pull in a couple of investors saying that we packaging this thing with, we got 10 episodes. These are roughly the ideas. This is where the show is going to go for the first season. And these are the actors attached. Seeing that, they were able to say, oh, we kind of see where the 10 episodes are going. Yes, we would want to, invest money in, or would not want to invest money in.
Okay. And so do you have to get investors before you went to pitch to Netflix?
Yeah. So for Brown Nation, what we did was we got the entire investors. We, even before we went to Netflix, we shot the entire thing, which was...
all 10 episodes?
Yeah, which was a pretty risky move on our side. But I think it's just because we didn't know any better at that time that we did that. And I don't know if I'll do that again because it's a really it's a big risk to do that.
So when you talk investors, how do you find an investor? For people who don't know, what is an investor?
So investors and producers are a little bit different. Producers who the person who really kind of manages the whole project. Finds the director, finds the writers, and all that. So they kind of manage even the creative aspects of it a little bit. The investors is purely money based. So anyone who's willing to put in some money for a rate of return at the very end, if the show succeeds, right? So we found those investors just because our shows in the past has done pretty well. We were able to we had a pool of networks of investors that we kind of pull from, but we also do just pitch decks with pitch meetings, and we even go to networking events to find to find investors that we could pitch out to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So you have to find these investors to give you the money to put the pitches together. And then how do you go about setting up these meetings with Netflix and whoever else you pitch to?
Yeah. So what we did with Brown Nation was basically, since once we got the entire project filmed, then we took an agent to kind of show the product out to an agent.
Okay.
Who came, and then they liked the project, and then they kind of pitched out to Netflix. So I don't think as a writer director, I don't think you could approach Netflix on your own. I think you definitely need an agent to kind of do that work for you. Unless you're a big time writer director, I don't think there's a way to
just mosey on into Netflix.
Yeah.
And be watch my show.
Yeah. I just think you just need a reputed agent who could kind of take your stuff to them.
Got it. So when you went to look for an agent, do you go and interview different people to see who fits what you're trying to sell?
Yeah, I think we had two agencies repping us at that time. We had CAA, and we also had a smaller agency called Tulsi, who are my agents. They're based in India, so we had them both repping us.
Okay. Is that normal to have two agents?
It's not, but since this was a very unique product, which was like American and Indian, we
Right.
just decided to go both routes. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. Very cool. It sounds like a great journey. So I guess from start to finish, how long does it take to when you started writing the script to actually getting it on Netflix?
It actually took about like two years,
Okay.
a little over 2 years. Because I'll tell you, like right after I quit my job, it took about a year to get the financing and everything done. Another 2 or 3 months. I think the easiest part is the filming. The shooting part is probably the easiest part. Everything that leads up to it, and the end is where like the difficulty lies in.
The end meaning like getting it actually
Getting
to
it
the.
out, yeah, getting it out onto Netflix, getting it out, like the editing, sound design, even just making even just getting the distribution out to a Netflix. I think that's like the hardest stuff.
Hmm. And your agent helps you through all that, or at that point is the agent done helping you?
No, I think they're there throughout the journey. So once you have them, they're still involved right now. To do, if we were to do a season two, they'll all still be involved.
So where does your inspiration come? Like you've done so many different things. You've done YouTube web series in your own language, and now you're doing something that's leans. I mean, I've watched Brown Nation. I would think it leans more American. Like it's. I mean, I don't know. Do they show it in India on Netflix?
Yeah, I think it does. I
Okay.
think it's
Okay.
about 190 countries or something
Oh
like that. They
wow.
do. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess where does your inspiration come from? What you want to write and put out there?
I think most of it comes from like my family. Most of it comes from the things that I'm around. For example, like the new series that we're doing, it's called Metro Park, and I don't know if you've ever been to Jersey.
I've been to Edison.
Yeah, so that's
Of course, I would say that, right? You expected that.
no, so this whole thing, this whole series revolves around like Indians in Edison,
Okay.
Edison, Jersey. Like there's this train station called Metro Park in
Okay.
Edison. The minute you land, the minute you like arrive there, it's just like posters of like Amitabh Bachchan, and you could actually smell the curry like as you like are walking out of the train.
That's awesome. I never took the train there.
Yeah. So if you take the and there's a lot of people who commute into the city from there,
Mhm.
but it's just like a world like difference, like you like step out of the train and you're like, wow, like I went to like somewhere else, like it doesn't feel like America. So I always wanted to do something around with that environment, and the show that we're working on right now, it's called Metro Park. It kind of revolves around that. So I kind of like take pretty much experience that I've like lived around and been a part of, and kind of like make kind of fun of it.
How was your wife going through all this? Like when you left your job, was she very supportive?
Yeah, she's been very supportive of all this. It gets tough from time to time because I'm away a lot. Like just this year, I was in India for about like 4 months out of the year, working on a feature, and so just like that schedule gets a little tough. But she's been very supportive about this.
So how did you connect with people? I know you were born in India, but you moved to the States pretty young. How did you go back to India and connect with people there to kind of do film there as well?
So I studied in India for about a year, right out of high school. My dad kind of forced me to go to India and kind of learn the culture.
Oh,
so
nice.
so I was in India for about a year and a half, like just going to school, and I kind of like really liked it. I've been back to Bombay. I really like the culture. I really like going back to Bombay, like living in Cochin. I feel like there's a lot of stories to be told there still, and I think there's a new wave of like Indian like filmmakers that are doing great things, and I think it's a great time to go back and kind of do some really great stuff there.
That's cool. So I know you started with the web series, right, on YouTube. I guess what would you say to creatives right now? Like, I mean, you started on YouTube, Issa Rae started on YouTube, but a lot of people now will say YouTube is oversaturated. It's hard to get found. What would you say to those people?
I don't know. I think if your content is relevant and unique, I think people will find you. I think it's definitely much harder than when I started. I feel because there's just an abundance of material out there. But I still do feel that if you are unique and if you have a unique story to tell, people will find you.
So you got all these great things happening. I mean, you've got Brown Nation, you're working on this feature film. What is your goal in your creative journey?
I think it is to go back and forth with like American content and Indian content, and ideally I would love to do that. I would love to do more of like Hindi featured films, but I would also want to come back and do something that's truly American. So I feel like that's like something unique that our generation has that we could switch back and forth, and I really want to explore that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's very cool. Do you think you would ever put together like the next blockbuster movie, like Crazy Rich Asians or something?
Everyone is like onto that film now.
It's so good. It is so good. I want you to make that our film. Where is our Indian film?
I'm sure it's going to happen. Like if it's not me, somebody else is going to do it in the next 2 years.
It's going to be like a 7-day wedding. It's going to need 2 intermissions.
But I haven't seen the film, but it just feels like it's like your like Bollywood film, right?
Yeah, I mean, without the song and dance and intermission. But I mean, it's been such an amazing blockbuster year, right? You had Black Panther, you had Crazy Rich Asians. It's like, when is it going to be time for the South Asians to really shine?
Yeah. It's going to happen soon.
Yeah, we're waiting on you.
Yeah.
So what has been the most memorable moment of your journey?
I think it's the release of my first film in Kerala. I think you work a lot. You work like 2 or 3 years to like make this happen. But there's a great feeling when you see like billboards of your film that you thought about for years up on a billboard. It's just like it's still a great feeling to me. The fact that you created these characters and they're like living on like in a theater and like living in like billboards and all that. So it's still a very unique experience, that whole the release date and having your film shown in a theater and having like millions of people come in and watch your film.
For sure. So what are some of the challenges you faced?
I think one of the biggest challenges is like one of the features that I did not really do well, and it was about a year and a half of my journey, and it took me about a year to kind of get out of the like depression mode of like why that film did not work. And I think one of the reasons is that, and this happened to me. I think one of the reasons is that I think I told a very American story to a regional for a regional film. The film was called Monsoon Mangoes, and it had a very like American sensibility that I tried to adapt to like a very like a regional film, and it just didn't work, because it looked very much like an American film.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. That's a good challenge. Have you had any other challenges? Have you faced any kind of pushback because you're the first, other than maybe if you consider Aziz Ansari, you're like the first South Asian TV show on Netflix, right?
Yeah, I think, one of the other biggest challenges that I kind of briefly touched on it before, this was like, where does like a show like Brown Nation sit, right?
Yes, right.
Does it sit in the American world, like, or does it sit in the Indian world? And I think it's somewhere in between. I really don't think it's fully American. I really don't think it's fully Indian. It's somewhere in between, and I think that's where the Netflix or the Amazons of the world is kind of they're there at the right time, because I think it's able to capture those people in between as well.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. But did you ever get any pushback from people who were saying don't go this route and just stay mainstream American?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, like when you start pitching out, a lot of people will say that to you, saying that it's somewhere in that land. But I feel like that's changing. Like I think one of the examples that you just said about like Crazy Rich Asians, I think that's pretty much. I think it's assessments of like how times are changing, because I think that leads itself to somewhere in between as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's true.
yeah, so I think times are changing, and I think that market's going to open up a lot more.
That's true. Yeah, no, I agree, and I hope so, because I think you're right. We're at that moment where a lot of change, I feel, is coming in the next year or two. So, what advice do you have for creatives on their journey?
I think it's for me. I think it's like start as early as you can. Like I don't think you need to like wait to have like a safe job. Well, that's one thing I've learned, that there's nothing called safety. Even if you have like a regular job, I don't think there's anything called safety. I think if you're really passionate about filmmaking or whatever it is, I think you should just start it as early as possible. And even if you fail, just keep going at it, because it's eventually, you're going to make it. Eventually, you're going to find your own voice, and it's all going to work out.
Yes, I love that. I love that people need to learn that failure is okay, and it's okay to bounce back. And I mean, what would you say is one? I mean, you mentioned it a little earlier. One of your feature films didn't do as well as it that you had hoped that it would. But is there any big failure that really helped you kind of move forward and really develop your skill set?
No, I think it's that. I think I've had a couple of like good successes, but I think you only learn from like your failures. So, and I think that film taught me a lot about just kind of like moving on too, right? So like you can't just you can't just like stay with your failures. Like you just got to move on. Like sometimes like things don't work, and you just have to kind of like change your way of doing things and see if it works out better.
Yep. No, that's true. I feel like creatives do that too. We mourn in our own losses.
Yeah. I know I do. So
I do too. I will mourn something to death, and I have to like have it torn away from me.
Yeah. No.
So. Well, this was really informative. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Yes, I am.
Okay, awesome. So first question, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Fail fast and like fail hard.
What's your definition of success?
I think it's pretty much doing what you love to do and making a living out of it.
Who inspires you and why?
I know there's a lot of stigma behind this guy, but I love Woody Allen. I love the way he tells stories. I love the quirkiness that he's got. I love the fact that he takes all his like childhood memories and like makes fun of it. I love his pure sense of like storytelling.
What's a habit that's helped you on your journey?
Just being like very habit oriented, like just writing like 2-3 pages a day and just making a habit out of it. Like no matter how painful it is, just making sure that you do that on a daily basis. And
what do you want your legacy to be?
I want to be like remembered for something quirky that this comedy that I do that's kind of quirky and unique style of its own. So hopefully, with doing a couple of films like this, I will definitely have a unique style that people resonate with.
That's I love that. So, Abi, if our listeners wanted to find you online, where could they find you?
They could find me on Twitter or Facebook. Abi Varghese. It's ABIVARGHESE.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sharon, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, before you hit pause, did you find this episode helpful and enjoyable? If so, could you leave an Apple Podcast, aka iTunes review? It'll take you less than 1 minute and mean the world to me. The more ratings and reviews the show gets, the more people are able to find this podcast. If you're unsure how to leave a review, no worries. If you're on your iPhone or iPad, go to the homepage of this show and scroll down to Write a Review. Click on it and you'll be able to rate and review the show. If you're on a Mac, from iTunes, go to the show homepage and on the top, click Ratings and Reviews. Also, please subscribe to get the latest episodes once they drop. If you enjoyed the episode and know someone who would love it, please share. From your iPhone, click on the icon with 3 dots and then share via social media, email, or text. If you want to hear more, head over to funnybrown.com/podcast. You can also find me online. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Funny Brown Girl. Also, sign up for my free newsletter for more tips to advance your creative journey at funnybrowngirl.com/subscribe. And again, if you enjoyed the show, do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Now, go flex your creative muscle and keep winning. Thank you for listening. See you next week.